How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I am fine. Sri Swami, and I want you to pronounce your name and teach us about your name. I don't know
Okay.
what Sri and Swami and all that is, but I think it's
Okay.
beautiful. Go for it.
All right. It's really long. Okay. So Shri is like an honourable, auspicious. So you know how you have His Excellency or
Yes.
Honourable the Pope or His Holiness, that kind of thing. So Shri would be that. It's Your Holiness kind of thing, and
Yeah.
that works. By the way, we use that with everybody. It's not rare or unusual.
What do you have to do
Swami,
to What do you have to do to earn that title? Sorry.
it's usually given by my guru.
Oh, okay. Wow. All
Yeah,
right.
so all my three names are given by my guru.
Okay.
So basically, he's the one that decides. Okay, you're going to be called now. When we go through the ordaining process, he essentially decides, what name to give us, and we just take it. We have no choice about it. Of course, he does give us a choice when he sees us, like winch or frown or hey,
Oh, yeah.
because I don't know. He say, okay, well, let me try something else. I don't think he gave me a choice. He said, "This is it, done."
Okay.
I'm like, okay.
Rules with a firm hand. Okay. Swami?
Yeah. So Swami is a title, is one who is all of these names, by the way, they come from Sanskrit. And Swami means your own Lord. There's no one overseeing you. Like there's no lordship beyond a Swami. So not even the president or the king has lordship over the Swami. So we're like free birds. But then, of course, it's so used randomly now that it really doesn't carry the same meaning as it did before.
Yeah.
Atma Ananda, there are three words that are brought in together. And in Sanskrit, if you translate that, Swa is the self, Atma is basically the cosmic consciousness, and Ananda is like you stay rested in that. In other words, if you really translate that, it simply means that you are enlightened and you are content with that recognition of what the enlightenment was. So.
What a beautiful name. And your real name? I hope it's not like John Diffenbacher or something, is it?
No, it isn't. I wish I could say that. People had a problem even pronouncing my earlier name. My earlier name was Swar, which
that's pretty too.
actually, again, has a beautiful meaning. Too,
so you had been under the mentorship of a guru. Tell us your story. How did that thing happen? And then we want to talk about the philosophies that you would like to educate us about.
So I was like pretty much any immigrant kid. And I'll tell you, basically, if I saw someone like me, I would take a byway and a highway. It's like I did not even want to be close to a Swami. I did not even want to go to an ashram. I was so anti. It's like when you grow up in a religion, in a particular tradition, you want to be so away from that. And that's pretty much what I stayed with. I went to a convent school for my elementary, elementary type undergrad. It's elementary school. That's what you call it here. We call it primary school.
Oh yeah.
So then, and then I did a high school overseas. I came here for college. I got 2 engineering degrees. I just wanted to be part of the American dream. And, that's what I pursued. I was like, Americans have gone to the moon, and they don't sit around, piddle, and squabble about ancient traditions or rituals or, antiquated ways of living.
Well, we need to, but
yeah,
go on. Yeah.
I know. And then I was like, okay, this is the American dream. So I kind of got the American dream at a very early age and realized the hollowness in that. And so I said, is this it? Because you have fame, you have money, you have this white picket fence, and except I didn't have a wife or kids, so that kind of helped. But then I was like, what's the point? What's the point? And basically, in that search of what's the meaning of life, it kind of led me to explore other things. And I still stayed away from our tradition. I didn't want to have anything to do with the Indian tradition. That's my background. My parents are from India.
But why is that? Because you wanted to assert your independence from your parents and your family, like most young kids do and young adults?
Yeah, what I saw, when you grow up in this culture, you see, you sort of get brainwashed by the television and what's going on in the media. It's like, I want that. And my thing was, when I looked at my tradition, I saw it antiquated, primitive, superstition. I really didn't get it.
Yeah.
And frankly, when I would go to the temples, I would see some of these ladies chant in the temple, and you hear them chanting. I can tell you, even the gods would run away. It was so scary, and I was like, I don't want to have anything to do with this stuff. And then the people generally, you would see that there would be two sides of them. It's like they would go and pray really hard. They come out, and they're not very nice people. And I'm like, this is not right. And so,
oh my gosh, I can tell you so many stories about that in the Christian religion too. So
exactly.
There's a number of them that are hypocrites.
Yeah, in fact, I found most people that were really pious or religious, they just had a double life. And the guys that were my normal friends who did not go to church, who did not go to temple or mosque, they were like really nice people. And I was like, so I got to stay away from this and focus on science. So my big thing was science. Okay. And that's why I went out and got 2 engineering degrees. And part of it was I wanted to see how the world works, and science is the future. I didn't believe in religion or in any form of beliefs and so after getting into science, I realized that has flaws too, and that has limitations. And then I decided, well, I need to somehow change the world. And what's the point of being born if you don't contribute? Yeah. And I knew that I could do something, so I got 2 master's degrees. And so from then I started saying, well, let me go and help developing countries. So I kind of did that for a few years and realized even that had a very unhealthy codependency between the donor and the recipient of the donations. So I was like, okay, what's the point? And then I went through a real difficult time in my life, and that's when astrology came into my life. Mm-hmm. And my mom had actually gone to the temple in India and told her things about me, which was like so detailed and specific.
Oh, the astrologer did?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was and she didn't tell me about it until like 3 years later. Oh. So I'm looking at her notes, and 3 years later, I'm like, wow, how did this all come true? Because this is really specific stuff to me. And I was living here in the U.S., and she was in India. So I never met this guy. And how did he know this? And so what happened was, in my engineering mind, I was like, I got to figure this out. And he, we never talked. He never had some energy thing about me, but it was like as if he knew me better than I knew myself. Wow. And I said, wow. So I started saying, okay, I got to figure it out. But the thing is, I was so anti-Indian at that point. And so I went to the Greeks, because I figured the Greeks, they were the cradle of Western civilization. I valued Western civilization and Western traditions. And so I started doing Greek astrology. But Greek astrology kind of helped me understand astrology in its from a forest perspective than from a tree perspective. And
I didn't even know there was such thing as Greek astrology.
Well, it's not.
I thought that was just astrology. Period. Wow.
No, actually, there's a whole history about astrology. I can talk about the roots of astrology and how it got corrupted, where it got lost, the way people practice it. But basically, Aristotle and Plato and our Alexander the Great, they practiced amazing astrology, which was really, really amazing, and advanced so much more than what we have today in Western astrology. So today's Western astrology, while it's still useful, is basically like comparing a bicycle to, let's say, a spaceship. Mm. So we just are looking at, So we're just looking at the crumbs of astrology today. And that's why it's easily debunked. But you'll find that there's some great astrologers. They're kind of using that. They're using astrology, but they're tapping into their psychic and channeling ability to do good readings. But it's not based on astrology itself.
Okay.
So we have a lot of great psychics who are able to kind of look at a chart in Western astrology and give great predictions.
Mm-hmm.
But that is based on the mediumship rather than on the...
Yes.
Yeah.
Or maybe at least a combination of both.
Exactly. So I can give you on some day when you want, I can give you the whole history of astrology.
Yeah,
and
we could do that another session. And we could tell our viewers, how can they get this deeper, not just the crumbs of astrology, but Greek or Indian astrology. I mean,
right.
What do you think about Indian astrology now?
Oh, so now Indian astrology was not corrupted. It's part of the culture. They've been practicing this for 6,000 to 10,000 years, even 15,000 years. And, if you go to every temple, that's what they do every day for the last 15, 20,000 years.
Gosh.
And so when Galileo, for instance, talked about the earth rotating around the sun and almost got crucified for that, the Indians knew that every day. It's part of the life, part of the tradition. So if you look at Hindu temples in India, they can't do anything without looking at the movement of the planets, and that's how they do their rituals. So it's very much part of the Indian tradition and Indian culture till today.
Fascinating.
Yeah, and here's the more interesting thing: is that how did this guy 6,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, even 50, it doesn't matter, 2,000 years ago, it's still a very long time. How did these guys know the distance of the planets, the size of the planets, the movement of the planets without the telescopes and the computers that we have today? And by the way, today,
how did they?
And that's the interesting part. And today's astronomy, like what NASA comes out with in terms of the mathematical calculation, validates what Indian astrology has been practicing for thousands and thousands of years. And the way they found that out, by the way, is through, what you guys do here is through Erik channeling. It's like they have mediums, they talk to non-incarnated beings, and the beings then tell them, look, by the way, you want to know the size of Pluto? Here it is. You want to know where the planet is? Here they are. And they move at this pace, they retrograde at this point. This is how they exist. These are the characteristics and the features, and this is how it influences human persons.
Well, do you think that that some of the information came from direct meetings with aliens, possibly?
I don't know whether there's no evidence to say that they came from aliens, but then what we do is, in our tradition, we call them rishis, or basically they are sages. So essentially what happens is there's a whole culture of sages who communicate with extraterrestrial beings, or they're just entities, just like the way Erik is today.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's, whenever we have mediums talking to Erik, so there are really wise Eriks around, roaming around.
There's
guys.
Plenty. But they probably don't have the potty mouth he does. But
no, they do not.
No, but I do remember one of the first blog members that got pranked by Erik, or visited by Erik, rather, was this guy in Ireland, and Erik appeared before him, and the guy wasn't a believer or anything, but there's this apparition, and he says, "Hey, dude, I bet I could tell you how far away your girlfriend is from me, and from you." And she was in Canada, and he gave the exact number of kilometers, and he was just floored. I mean, he looked it up and stuff, but so that's cool. It's kind of similar.
Yeah. So the entire body of knowledge that I deal with right now is called the Vedas. And the Veda, when you say the Veda, that means everything that's contained in the Veda was actually transmitted or revealed knowledge. So we say it was revealed because no human mind can actually conceive and even conceptualize some of the information that's contained within the body of knowledge that we call the Vedas.
Yeah, we don't even have some of the vocabulary to understand it.
Absolutely. So here's the other thing. You'll find that in Asian cultures, which I did a lot of research on ancient traditions, is that the language limited their ability to understand the complexities of life beyond the human existence. Now, in Sanskrit, that allows for that option. Because in Sanskrit, Sanskrit is a language that is almost like a painting. So, for instance, you can create words as we speak, or I can create words as we speak, and you'll totally understand what I mean, because the entire structure is based on roots. So as long as I have the roots, and then I know the prefixes and the suffixes, I kind of put them together, and I start just making up words as I go, and you'll totally get what I'm doing. It's like a painter. So, for instance, a painter takes 7 color pencils, and he or she can paint this amazing painting. You still get it, And so that's exactly what Sanskrit does. And so Sanskrit allows for complex terminologies to be transmitted and explained. And so the way they did that is the way, for instance, how we communicate with Erik. Mm-hmm. He would describe. So part of it is also our understanding in terms of our intellectual capacity to understand what's being transmitted.
And our willingness to be open and aware, too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of people say my writing is like Sanskrit.
Oh, is it?
I'm a doctor. Yeah,
that's right.
But just one real quick question, and I hate to sound stupid. Actually, I really don't care. Sanskrit is only a written language, right?
No. So Sanskrit and most Indian oral tradition is an oral tradition, right?
Okay.
So basically what happened is the language was oral, the teaching was oral. In fact, this whole body of knowledge is all oral, which is kind of interesting because in the olden days, they didn't have paper and they didn't have pen. So the entire process of communication was orally. Mm-hmm. So you find that is true with every ancient culture.
Yeah.
Now, what happened is over the 1,000 years or so, they started actually writing it down. So then it became a literal tradition. But until today, if you really look and analyze the Indian culture, it's still a very much orally based culture rather than a literal culture that we have in the West. So here we like to read.
Yeah.
But you find most older cultures, they don't know how to read. They want to talk.
Well, I kind of like that.
It is, yeah.
Because then you have more of a connection, and there's communication that happens with connection. You have intonation, you have emotion, you have facial expressions. There's so much more that can be communicated in the oral tradition.
Correct, absolutely correct. And that's why some of these complex methodologies of communication happen much more effectively than we are doing today. However, if you want to know something very specific that's mechanical, then it's okay to read.
Yeah.
But if you want to be a carpenter, you can't read a book about it.
No.
If you're trying to cook a great recipe like lasagna, you can't read a book about it. You kind of have to actually
do
it.
Absolutely, yes.
So that's true. Yeah.
Okay, so tell me more about the Veda. Anything else you want to say about your journey, though? Hey, we didn't even get to the point where you I just hooked up with the guru.
Right. So I went through this. I was promoting the Vedas as a manager, and that was my skill before. So I've got like 30 years of experience in consulting and management experiences. Started many businesses, maybe about 20, 25 around the world. And so I did a lot of that, and I was still empty. And I began to try to figure out what's the point of life and what's the meaning of life. Why are we suffering so much? Why are we doing all the things we have to do? We have children and we suffer. We get a lot of money and we're still lonely. We get fame and we want to hide away from all these people that know us. So there's nothing that we do that actually really gives us the total happiness. And finally, since I was against not having a teacher, I didn't believe in that. I didn't believe in our tradition. It just dawned to me at some point that I actually wanted to know about the Vedas, which I found that the information that was contained in the Vedas was so amazing, and it was nothing like I had ever come across. Now, I know a lot about technology or the modern world, for instance. But then what was contained in this body of knowledge was all in Sanskrit, and I needed to learn it. And in order to do that, I needed two things. One, I needed to succumb to a teacher, and two, learn Sanskrit, which I didn't even want to do.
Oh
But
my
then
gosh. Oh, that is such a big undertaking. But go
it
ahead.
is. And then, I had a really cushy life here in the US, and it was like, where do I go find a guru? And the idea to travel in India and in those conditions, I was like, there's no way I'm going to do that. And I wanted a really particular type of guru. I had a recipe of the kind of guru I wanted, which is a bit idiotic, but that's where we are, and that's how we are.
Yeah, we're human.
And then we have this thing, you might have heard that when you're ready, the guru shows up.
Yes.
So basically, I got an email one day from him, and it's another long story. But the point is, I got an email. I was like, "Who is this guy?" Checked him out, and I was very suspicious. I did a lot of inquiry and decided to visit him here in Pennsylvania. That's where I'm at right now. And then he sent me to India. I went to India for about 4 years and stayed pretty much in a forest filled with snakes and scorpions, isolated in a forest with 25 other monks, and we lived there for about 3.5 years. And when I came out, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, that was quite an adventure.
Oh,
And then I came out.
this sounds awesome. I love nature. I would love to just do something like that, but go ahead.
Right, yeah.
This is about
You spend your nights, worrying about scorpions creeping up.
We're eternal beings. What's the worst that can happen to us?
Exactly, yeah. So it wasn't bad. We're in their territory. I mean, we're in the forest. It's not like, they're invading my territory. We were invading theirs. So we're very respectful of that, and allowing them to be where they are and without disturbing them.
Of course.
So I did that for about 4 years, and then I came back in 2007. And since 2007, I've been kind of teaching this knowledge that I have today. But what I focused more on is something called Vedanta, which is the end of the Vedas. So the Vedas is broken into 2 parts. And so the first part deals with rituals and things like that. Really rituals to give every person what they want to fulfill their desires. That's within the scope of Dharma. Mm-hmm. And the other part, which is the latter part of Vedas, has to do with the entire teaching of oneness. Mm. So we prove beyond a shadow of doubt, it's a very legal terminology, where we learn to understand and see that everything in the universe is one without a doubt. It's not like you have to be in an altered state to see the oneness. It's not like you have to meditate or do a headstand or go up in hiking in a forest to figure that out. It's like once you figure it out, you just know it, and you know it in all states, even when you're not very happy or upset, you still know that you're one with everyone.
But, and that's so important. If everybody understood that, then we'd be so much kinder to everybody, and to all living creatures.
Exactly.
Even inanimate objects, I guess. But how do you, I know it intellectually. How do you know it like deep in your soul?
Exactly. And so this is the process, because you see what happens is, when I'm in a happy mood, and I usually not to bash Californians, but I lived there for a while. Mm-hmm. But you see, when you're in a happy, new agey mode, you love everybody and you say, I love everybody. The problem is when somebody comes and smacks you, suddenly, your emotions change and you want to kill that person. And wait, at that moment, where's the oneness? Because if you say that we're one, or if I say I'm one of everything, then I should be okay with Saddam Hussein or Osama bin Laden. Mm-hmm. Or if you're not very happy with Trump, then you should be okay with him because he's one with you, mm-hmm. right? So the whole idea of coming into terms with oneness or understanding it, because it takes understanding. It's not a spiritual process. It's a process of where you can have the mental capacity, the cognitive skills to be able to discern between the existence of duality and what is beyond that duality. So if you understand the process that all this duality is merely forms of the same thing, then you begin to know that everything is one. And if you understand the law of karma and how all that plays together, you begin to see that it's all connected, And so you hear, one of the things I appreciate, because I've been watching your show for about a year or so, And one of the things that I really appreciated about it is what Erik was actually talking about, the oneness from a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was like, oh, wow. There's somebody else from another tradition is actually saying the same thing that I've learned through my tradition, which is through books and through, because they're written now,
Mm-hmm.
and through the body of knowledge that we have, which is very traditional and has been preserved and taught exactly the same way for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the programming I went through during the 4 years that I was in India.
Mm-hmm. What did he say? I can't remember.
Oh, everything. I mean, everything. He talks about the oneness. He talks that we're all one, and that we are an expression of love. I mean, most of the stuff that actually comes out of Erik's instructions or guidance and what he tells us, it's really, to me, what I knew.
Yeah.
So it kind of blew me away. It's like, wow, here's a modern day young kid, it's no longer young, but, and I said, well, let me hear it out. And so that's when I got hooked. It was about a year and a half ago. So going back to your earlier question.
Yeah.
So in order to do this, you see, we are told that we're all one. We can kind of vaguely sense it. We can sense it because we know deep in our hearts we're one. But in our transactions, in our daily transactions, we don't behave that way. Now, the way to reconcile our duality and that oneness is that we have to go through a process of learning. Okay, so we have something in Vedanta which is called the Upanishads. So you got to sit with a live teacher, and the live teacher then holds your hand and works you to break away your ignorance about the other, about the non-dual. And once you break away through that ignorance, it's a slow process, it's an understanding process. And once you get to that point, you then assimilate that into your behavior, into your daily existence. So what happens is, look, if I know that taking a knife kills someone, hurts someone, I will not do that, right? So the same thing happens. If I truly understand oneness, then my daily behavior will be according to my understanding of oneness. So my transactions with people will be based on that. And, a lot of those transactions, the way we transact, the way we understand, I find Erik has been talking about it over and over and over again, which was, to me, also really nice to hear. It's like, wow, he's really speaking some truths there that we need to understand. And one of the things that I wanted to come on the show was to actually tell you guys and your listeners that a lot of the stuff that Erik talks about, and you'll see, you can sometimes tell the difference when Erik is saying something versus, the filtering processes where, some medians might not be able to understand. You can tell the difference. But if you can really figure out what Erik is talking about, he's dead on a lot of things because he's sitting from a different perspective.
True.
And he can see from a different perspective that this is what the reality is. And, I just wanted to validate that to your viewers to say, hey, look, from our tradition, this is exactly what we're talking about.
That's awesome. But there is this illusion of, scarcity, but there's an illusion of separation. There is no separation. But how do you reconcile the fact that we need to very deeply understand that we are whole and part of Source, which is love, and that we are a collective, and that's all there is love, us, collective, Source. But we still are humans, and we have to go through the human experience, and for that, we have to have an ego. We have to have that illusion of separation. We have to have the duality, the contrast, in order to learn and evolve, or relearn. He says we already know this stuff, but we need to
exactly, and that is absolutely correct.
On an experiential, we know conceptually, but as humans, we need to take it in on an experiential level. Okay, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. So the ego is a necessity. Now, many times you'll find other traditions will say that ego is something that you do away with, and that's not correct because you need the ego to transact and understand. In fact, the teaching is within duality. You see, when I'm teaching or, there's a teacher and student, that's duality. The conversation is duality because the person hears it, right? So the interesting thing is that you understand a non-dual you understand that we're all one through the medium of duality.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's how it works. Like, for instance, you're a medical doctor, I believe, I presume,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. So you see how psychologists works with their patients?
Mm-hmm.
They don't tell them what the psychologist knows. He finds a way, he or she finds a way for the patient
to come up with it.
Okay,
because that will have more meaning. That's embedded in the person's psyche if they come up with themselves. Yeah,
absolutely. So they need that process, an evolutionary process, and this is what we talk the ascension process. Is that you need to get the wisdom to be able to conceive and understand what is being presented. So it's like, if I talk to a 10-year-old about building a spaceship, I mean, that's way beyond the 10-year-old capacity. But if I talk to someone who's a physicist or a PhD engineer, I mean, I don't really have to talk about the fundamentals. I just go in and, explain the science behind it and tell him, and he gets it right away. Mm-hmm. And so you find that that's true in most professional fields. So in order to really understand this teaching and the oneness, one of the things that we need is the inner maturity. We're not talking about age here. We're talking about the souls that have been reborn many, many times, and they carry the wisdom with them in every lifetime.
Of course, there's no linear time.
Right.
So I don't know. Well, that may be just too mind-bending because you have to talk in a way that humans can understand.
Exactly.
But maybe it's a souls who have really put a lot on their plate and have had difficult incarnations that have been very fruitful as far as teachable moments are concerned. But
absolutely,
we don't have to go through that. Go ahead.
Right. But, and all of that works, like what he talks about, the lack of time in, after we're born. All of that is, we learn about that. It's written. We know that as a matter of fact. So, but coming back to earthly terminology, we do have many lives. And in each lifetime, there are three things we take with us. One is that we take the wisdom we have gained in that lifetime. Two, we take our set of good karmas and a set of bad karmas. So if I use that term, of course, we can have another discussion about that.
Oh, yeah.
But every reincarnation, we come here with that wisdom. So if you look at kids, some kids are really, really smart. And they have this inner knowing, like Mozart could play music at 4 years old.
Yes.
And there's so many kids, when we look at them today, we say, oh my God, they're so much more wiser than we were when we were young, So these people are older souls. That means that they've just reincarnated over and over again to gain the wisdom that they have with them, and they're bringing it over. You carry it over in every lifetime. You never, ever lose that wisdom. Okay? So when you're ready, you come to a point where you're not very passionate about life, or you were pursuing all the things that people want and realize the hollowness in that. And that's
like you did. Yeah.
Absolutely. Found hollowness in money, hollowness in fame, and hollowness in relationships and things like that. And then you say, okay, what next? And when you get to that point, like what next, if you're fortunate enough to meet the right teacher and then you come across this teaching, then you start working through that process of, it's almost like mind bending. Because you see, like for instance, we use our eyes to see. Like you use your eyes to see me. You cannot use other senses to see me. You cannot use your nose or ears. You can hear me, but you cannot use your eyes to see me as a person. Okay, so we have these five senses, and their utility is just very specific to that functionality. Okay, now, in order to see the oneness, we need to use the brain, the faculty of cognition, because it is there where the understanding takes place. To interpret, the eyeball simply transmits light. It doesn't do any interpretation. Okay, the eyeball transmits images into your brain. Our brain then says, oh, what's this image? Okay, then you see me and you say, oh, this guy, I don't like him, I hate him, or I love this person, So we then put value based on our memories on what this image means to us.
Right.
So it's basically the brain that processes information. Now, in order to really understand the oneness, this information, the oneness cannot be accessed through the five senses. So we need to use the brain to deconstruct the brain and its understanding of the universe in order to go beyond the duality.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the whole process of this teaching. And once you get this, once you see it, because you see it with your mind and not with your eye, and when you can see it with your mind, then it's so totally clear. Like, for instance, just to give you an example, I mean, we know our daily experience when we wake up is because there's a sunrise. We go to bed at sunset.
Mm-hmm.
We know and we see, we experience the community, society wakes up and goes to bed based on the sunrise, sunset. We see the sun traversing the skies, you know. And so you go around and say, wait, that's not really true because the earth goes around the sun and this is an appearance, you know. And
right.
This is exactly the process of it.
Oh, I see. Oh, epiphany.
Exactly.
That is so cool. Sometimes I feel like in my mind, I see the world as just sea of energy that has just different terrain to it, different colors to it, but it's all connected, you know. I mean, my desk is a sea of energy, kind of shaped like a desk, and it's totally molded to my computer, but it's all connected. So sometimes that helps me, but still, I got a long way to go. I'm telling you.
Right. And so a lot of people go into this process where they feel that if they have a mystical experience, they see that. No, mystical experiences helps, but it's just a fleeting moment of experiencing that oneness. Like, for instance, when people meditate for long hours, you know, and so you can do all these things, but all those things basically in an altered state is useful because you have that experiential thing. But to really understand that there is oneness is basically the way we see how the earth rotates around the sun, and we're totally okay with that. But it doesn't mean we change our lifestyles. We still wake up when the sun is. You know, it's like, I don't go around and say, okay, I'm going to change my lifestyle today because the sun doesn't rotate around the earth.
Right.
Yeah. So, and that's exactly what happens. But here's the thing. It's like, you know, I used to watch all these commercials late night, and then they say, but wait, there's more.
I know.
So that's what I make. But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Not only do you see the oneness, and what happens is when you understand the oneness, there's tremendous love and compassion that exudes in your behavior because that's what you see. You know, you see everything as one. And then there's more, in the sense that you see the beauty of it all. You know, of course you see the pain, and you see what's happening with the terrorism, and you see people getting hurt, and you see what the natural disasters are doing. But at the same time, you're like, wow, you know, this is beauty in its own way.
It is, because there is value in everything. Like Erik says, there's no good or bad, no right or wrong. Everything is just a wonderful experience that we can find value in some way. Like my abusive childhood, I am so grateful for it because, you know, I've learned how to be compassionate and nurturing and assertive. So, yeah. One thing I noticed is when I like an example, I'll go through the McDonald's drive-in and order a Happy Meal for my grandkid, and there's a difference between looking at a person and saying thank you and getting your change or your credit card back than really looking into their soul. I mean, there's this weird feeling, this connection, this buzz. I don't know what it is. Can you explain that?
Yes. So what happens is we all know we're one. Okay, that's our soul. Mm-hmm. Our souls know we're one. But what has happened is that we have camouflaged ourselves with this veil of ignorance. Mm-hmm. And that veil has a utility. It's not there, you know, to make our lives miserable. It's here to actually teach us the lessons we need to learn. But here's the thing, you know, when you meet someone for the first time, you either love or hate that person. Okay, so let's take extreme examples. You know, what you see in that person is your past life connection with that person. whether you love
Oh,
them or you
yeah.
hate them, right?
It might have
And
been a
so,
relationship villain of some sort in another. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we all actually, we have relationships and past life relationships with everybody.
Oh, wow.
Every,
Really?
yeah. So
Gosh.
you go to McDonald's and somebody serves you, right? And
Mhm.
they serve you with a smile and they made your day. Past life relationship, it happened that you were at some point in a past life where this person served you. And no, you served them and you made
Ah,
their day,
yeah.
right? So it all comes back. The people we have, let's say if I'm traveling in a plane and everybody there, like maybe 200 passengers, we all have collective karma.
Mm.
So, and because of that, we're traveling together. Now, what happens is, if my karmas are not so good, I get to sit with a really, really fat person who squeezes the hell
Uh-oh.
for 14 hours. That's my that's my karma with this person. So I just got to deal with it.
No,
So
but there's a special way you can look into somebody's eyes. Like I purposely decided to not look at their face, but look
yeah,
into their soul. And if
right,
that's the feeling I got, it was cool. Oh,
yeah.
go ahead. Sorry.
So what that explains is basically that you have evolved to a way where you can see people beyond their veils. Like for instance,
Ah,
when I look at people, I don't look at them as man and woman. I don't see the sex. In fact, most of my friends would make fun of me because I wouldn't notice their body parts. But
mm,
what I would do is I would see their soul.
mm.
So the more you understand about this, you get to a point where you see their soul rather than their physical features. And so that's what you do, is like you have that ability over the years of doing this work and investigating what's going on since Erik went away, is
Mhm.
that you can see, you have the ability, you've developed that ability to look at people beyond their facades,
I see.
beyond their veil.
I
So,
see.
and you can see, actually, the more and more you see that, you begin to see where they're holding back, where they're suffering. And so I tend to travel quite a bit. So when I'm at the airport, I might see people like that. I might see what's going on through them, and I'll just send prayers. And they might not know, but you can see that they shift.
I
Like, for
know.
instance, they're really sad and down, and then I'll do a prayer to wish them well, and that they may have an easier life. They may be relieved from the suffering, and immediately, almost, you can see them brighten up and move on. And of course, they don't come out to tell me thank you. I don't announce it. It's just a thing that I do to kind of help people, and
Oh,
so
that
yeah,
sounds wonderful and very uplifting. I think Erik used to do that too when he was here, because in Starbucks, he would people would gravitate toward him and sit at his table outside in Starbucks and start
right,
sharing their lives and their suffering and all that.
right, yeah.
So
I used to. I had this sense. I didn't know what I was doing, but I just had this intuitive sense to help people. And so whenever I was a real magnet to women who were depressed or sad. And if I saw somebody like that, I would go talk to them, and I'd just be compelled to talk to them, not because I was coming on to them, but then they would think I'm coming on to them.
oh gosh.
So I started
Oh,
backing away for many years. So
oh
I've actually backed away. I don't talk to anyone. I just do my thing. And
yeah.
yeah.
Okay, so tell me what you have to offer us in the
Okay,
way
so
of.
first thing, I kind of wanted to bring in to validate your viewers that, look, listen to what Erik is talking about, because that's the truth.
Mhm.
Okay, and of course you understand his guidance over the years. They're really, really baby steps to get you to finding happiness. In fact, I was talking about what's more earlier. The what's more there is that when you know more about the oneness, when you can begin to live it, you begin to get the contentment that we're all looking for. I mean, we think that if I fall in love and I meet this woman of my dreams, or if I meet the man of my dreams, that I'm going to be living happily ever after. That's a Cinderella story, which is one of the deadliest things that happens to American women or Western
Oh
women.
yes.
We don't have that story in other cultures.
Mm-mm.
So the point is that when we're constantly looking for gratification outside us, whether it is through fame, money, and in relationships, we're doing that because of our own insecurity. Okay, and that is also proven. I mean, this is what psychologists do, right? So that goes without saying. However, if we really, really need to find that contentment that we're all searching everywhere throughout our lives, throughout generations, is that we need to understand and be content with understanding that we're all one and learn how to transact with that point of view.
Well, that's interesting, because I always thought that the way to find happiness is by having a really good integrity. But maybe what I was really thinking is that being kind to other people, forming connections, that's a part of integrity. Don't hurt anybody, don't steal from them, etc. Because then you're behaving with the understanding that we are one.
Okay, so integrity is a very vital key, but it's an ingredient of showing your maturity level. Mm-hmm. When you are mature, when you come here with a lot of wisdom, one of the things that is innate is integrity. Mm. So when you have the feature or the characteristics of behaving with integrity, that is a qualification for saying, yes, I need to know more, or I need to understand this more. And you are totally qualified, which is why, you have had the experiences that you have had to prepare you to understand more. So your understanding and your learning comes through Erik and through, this endeavor that you have embarked on. But the thing is, those lessons now that Erik has been dishing out for so many years is that you take those little pieces, because he's kind of spoon feeding a baby, and that's basically the way we are, and we cannot do more than that. But the little that we get every time is what we take, and we try to integrate that into your life. If you end up doing that, or if your viewers start doing that, you see that more and more opens up. You start growing. And the more you start growing, you start seeing things that you did not see before, although you've been looking at the same thing, for all these years. So the part of it is that you have the integrity, which is the source of, which is actually qualifies you to assimilate this information. You take the information, integrate it into your lifestyle, and you begin to see how to interact with people. So yes, as human beings, the only purpose we're here is to express love. Mm. So here's the challenge. If you think we're one, not you, Elisa, but everybody else.
Me too, everybody, yeah.
Yeah. So if you think we're one, then you should be one with Trump.
Yeah, I'm one with Trump.
Yeah, or you should be one with Osama bin Laden.
And Hitler. Exactly.
Or Hitler, yeah. And, I know you have done interviews with Hitler and all of these guys. You see, they came here for a purpose, right?
Yeah.
And they're playing out their purpose. So why are you sitting there judging and getting so upset about what's going on?
It's not our place to judge anyway. There's no judgment on the other side of the veil. Why should we judge on this side? Exactly. Everybody, even if they annoy us or irritate, they look for the lesson they're sending us. And that will help you become closer to them and feel compassion and gratitude for them.
Exactly. And so this is why I teach. I said, look, how do you know you're really one? Is to really find love and compassion to the person who has hurt you the most.
Yeah.
Okay. If somebody comes and kidnaps your child, you do not know that was the arrangement you made before you were born. Mm. There was something in there for you to learn.
Yeah.
And there was something for the child to learn, and there's something for the person who took the child to learn. Okay. What do you have to do in this process is figure out what you need to learn and move on. And the more and more you practice this, so it doesn't mean you have to go to a temple or sit in a church or a mosque and meditate. What you really have to learn is, hey, how am I responding to the situation? What exactly am I doing to grow out of the situation? And I can guarantee you this from my own experience, that every challenge I've had to face in my life, which is a lot, my father was a schizophrenia. Mm. So just imagine growing up with that, which is one of the reasons I became,
Yes. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. So as a child, my whole world got destroyed. Mm. The reality changed because of his behavior, and he was not stable enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was looking for stability and meaning of life because he was there. Now here's the thing: while I had a horrible life because of him, and also the rest of my family suffered immensely, and my mother particularly. But the point of it all is that because he was an influence, or a destructive influence in my life, today I went beyond that to understand that, look, if he didn't do what he did, I would not be here helping people today. So I go around the world talking to people and helping them. And at the end of the year, I think I had one of the best job satisfactions because I've really shifted people's lives. But I wouldn't have been able to do that. I wouldn't have been able to come and talk to you today with this understanding if he did not play that role. Okay.
Wow.
So so I thank him. And I have full of gratitude. And I know
that's the way to end suffering, is find value in the hardship, be grateful for it so that you can embrace it and let it go.
Absolutely. And there's one more thing. I mean, I always have what's a wet way.
One more thing.
But wait, there's more. Here's the thing. When you are able to get to that point, the challenge that you have, whatever it may be, the moment you have figured out what you had to learn, or the lesson you had to learn, that problem disappears almost magically.
That's so true.
So every time I have a challenge, this is what I ask myself: what do I need to learn from this? Not blame the person, not accuse the person. I'm like, what do I need to learn for this? And I usually ask God or, the angels and the guides and say, okay, show me what I need to learn. And the thing is, we are so dense as human beings. So some of us are even, some of us, and I'm really dense. It takes me a really long time to figure things out.
Does for me too.
So I have to go through a lot of hardships to actually understand what's going on. Yeah. And once I do, it's uncanny. Once I do and figure it out, it's like suddenly the problem disappears.
The emotional charge just goes away.
Goes away, yeah, exactly.
All right, so what do you have to offer? Like, I'm going to have you give a way to people can connect with you, but do you have any special services, like one-on-one teaching or anything like that? I know you speak all over the world. Okay, so
people, I've been doing this through word of mouth. This is one of my very rare public appearances, but normally I don't show up because the people that need to find me anyway. And so I've been doing this for 10 years, just kind of helping people along the way. So there are many ways. Most of what I do on one-on-one is spiritual guidance. Okay. So in terms of spiritual guidance, I kind of let them know what their mission in life is, what their purpose of life is, what they need to do next step. And I use Indian astrology for that. It kind of gives me, because Indian astrology spells out your karma in this lifetime. But then I also say that Indian astrology, the way I do it, is more like a GPS. So for instance, before you get into your car, you know where you're going. That's your destination. By the way, destination comes from a Greek word that means destiny. So they're the same. Yeah. Right. So what happens is when you get into the car, you know where you're going. Then today we're so fortunate, we just plug in the thing, our destination in, and the phone or the GPS will tell you how to get there.
Wow.
So the GPS doesn't give you instructions 10 turns down the road. What it does, it tells you next turn. And it tells you how long it is before you take the next turn, whether you make a right or left. It also nowadays gives you traffic conditions, things like that, weather conditions. And sometimes I think some of them even tell you whether there's a cop with a radar gun waiting.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of what I do, is kind of give you a roadmap. Now, just like a GPS, it doesn't set your path in your journey. Mm-hmm. So there are a couple of things. One, you have a choice to make the turns you want. In spite of the fact that GPS tells you turn right, you say, well, no, I think I'm going to go ahead and take another.
It's like rerouting.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's called free will, Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And the GPS doesn't curse back and calls you idiot, why did you do that? You missed your turn. Do I have to tell you this again? You just say, recalculating, very patiently, just
Right.
recalculate with love and kindness. I mean, the GPS woman is really cool that way.
She knows that we are all one.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So she just says, well, humans are stubborn. So
what is your website? Because I want to book a session for my son, Lucas. He would be fascinated by this. He's 25.
Okay. So under 10, we're not advised to do this under 10.
Oh, no. Yeah, okay.
And so anyone above 10 is
Do I
fine.
look like somebody who would have a 10-year-old kid? Maybe.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, right. But, I love you. But how can people get in touch with you? And I will put it on the YouTube also.
So you can go to my website and I'll spell it out. It's SVATMANANDA.org.
That's easy enough.
Yeah, there's
No, it is. I mean, compared to the rest of the whole name.
Exactly.
My name's not easy either, so.
Right.
But that's
so
great.
I'm trying to come up with a nickname to shorten this because actually even the Indians are having a hard time pronouncing my name.
Oh, he builds character for people. It's fine. They'll be all right.
Yeah.
They will be
Just
all right.
to warn you guys that there is another website with SW, and that's not the right one. So it's SE.
Okay.
SVAT.
This is exciting. All right. I'm going to put this in queue to post. I think you're just great. I really feel close to you. I feel one with you.
Yes, you do.
Oh, my God.
Remember?
I feel one with you. I just love you. And, we're going to hopefully next year have an Erik Palooza big event.
Right.
It would be awesome if you came there and
Sure.
different people are going to, sell their services, that are booked ahead of time and stuff. But we will see. Sounds good. Thank you so much. And I hope this is not the last of our interactions together.
And if your viewers are interested, I can pretty much talk about the stuff that Erik has talked about in terms of reincarnation, what happens after we die, what are the kinds of things, why we are born, what's the point of all this, So if they field out some questions to you and want to know more, I would be happy to actually have topical discussions. And including health, we do health, where we talk about the Ayurveda, the natural way of living, a balanced lifestyle. Then also, I know you did a topic on Feng Shui, which we have an Indian version of it, which actually talks.
Oh my God, there's so many things, but just let me know when you and I can do this again together. Okay?
Yeah, so I'm available. We'll talk.
All right. Well, you're probably less available than me, but contact me and let me know. And I love you. Thank you so much. And
I love you too.
Bye.
And thank you for all the good work you are doing. It's
and
really
you too. You too. You're such a lovely being.
Thank you too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.